When she was struggling, they were busy. When she needed help, they were unavailable. When she was building something from nothing, working nights, borrowing money, eating anxiety instead of sleep, sending emails into silence and pretending rejection did not hurt her, they had other things to do. Then she succeeded, and suddenly, the phone started ringing. The cousins who had not called in 4 years, the aunt who had been too busy to come to her wedding, the uncle who once laughed quietly and told her the business would probably never survive, the family friends who watched her struggle from a careful emotional distance, close enough to observe, never close enough to help. Now they were proud of her. They had always believed in her. They always knew she would make it. Dark psychology has a name for what she was experiencing, and what it reveals about family systems, about conditional attention, about the invisible relationship between achievement and affection, changes the way people see love forever once they notice it. Because some people do not disappear when you suffer because they hate you. They disappear because suffering gives them nothing emotionally rewarding to attach themselves to. 3 seconds. Her name is Nadia. She is 38 years old. She grew up inside a large, close-knit family, the kind of family that gathers for every holiday, discusses everyone's life choices openly, circulates news between relatives like currency, and measures closeness through constant involvement in each other's lives. From the outside, it looked warm, supportive, connected, and in many ways, it genuinely was. That is what makes this dynamic so psychologically confusing, because the love was real, the smiles were real, the pride was real. Nothing was fake. But the love was organized around something invisible, worth. And in Nadia's family, worth was not something you possessed naturally. Worth was something you demonstrated, something you earned, something you proved through visible success. Dark psychology calls this transactional love. Not transactional in the obvious sense, not cold, not calculating, not people consciously deciding, I will only love you if you succeed. It is far more subtle than that. Transactional love is when affection, attention, pride, emotional availability, and closeness unconsciously expand around achievement and unconsciously contract around struggle. The people inside the system rarely notice they are doing it, but the person living through it always feels the temperature change. Dark psychology identifies 5 specific markers of transactional family systems. The first is availability attached to achievement. When Nadia struggled through her 20s, people were hard to reach. Messages unanswered, calls returned days later, support postponed. Everyone busy, everyone tired, everyone overwhelmed by their own lives. But when the business succeeded, suddenly everyone had time. Suddenly everyone wanted dinner. Suddenly everyone remembered birthdays. Suddenly everyone wanted updates, quiet realization. The shift was never dramatic enough to confront. That is what makes it psychologically devastating. No single moment proves the pattern. It exists in accumulation, tiny absences, tiny disappearances, tiny emotional withdrawals repeated over years until the person finally realizes people became emotionally available only after success made them socially exciting again. The second marker is public pride and private absence. Transactional families adore success because success is emotionally easy to love. Success is comfortable. Success is celebratory. Success allows relatives to feel connected to something impressive without being asked to sacrifice anything personally. But struggle is different. Struggle asks for emotional labor, patience, presence, practical support, discomfort, and many people who believe themselves loving become strangely absent the moment love requires inconvenience instead of admiration. Nadia remembers sitting alone in a tiny apartment at 29 years old, staring at unpaid invoices while trying to keep her business alive. She remembers eating cheap microwave meals because every dollar mattered. She remembers crying quietly at 2 a.m. after another investor rejection email. She remembers walking home after meetings pretending confidence while privately wondering whether she was destroying her life, chasing something impossible. And during those years, almost nobody called. Not because they hated her, not because they wished her failure, but because struggling people make other people uncomfortable. A struggling person reflects vulnerability back at everyone watching them. And most family systems are designed to move away from discomfort, not toward it. The third marker of transactional love is the rewriting of history. This is the part Nadia describes as the most psychologically exhausting, because when success finally arrived, everyone behaved as though they had always been there. They always believed in her. They always supported her. They always knew she was talented. And nobody acknowledged the silence. Nobody acknowledged the years where she built everything alone. Nobody acknowledged the emotional distance. The absence simply vanished from the family narrative. She told me, I received 11 calls in 3 weeks from relatives who had not called in years. And every conversation was warm. Every conversation was loving. But not one person said, I'm sorry I wasn't around when things were hard. That is the wound, not the absence itself, the erasure of the absence, the fact that the silence becomes invisible to everyone except the person who survived it. Dark psychology calls this narrative correction. The family unconsciously rewrites the emotional past in order to preserve its image of itself as loving and supportive. And because the rewriting is unconscious, it becomes almost impossible to challenge, because confronting it makes the struggling person appear bitter, ungrateful, dramatic, or emotionally difficult. So most people stay silent and carry the contradiction alone. The fourth marker is contact carrying hidden expectation. When success made Nadia visible, people wanted access to her again. Advice, connections, visibility, association. The emotional warmth was genuine, but underneath the warmth, there was movement, a subtle emotional gravity pulling toward what her success represented. And Nadia could feel it, even when she could not fully explain it. The fifth marker is withdrawal after failure. Transactional family systems almost always repeat themselves. When achievement rises, warmth rises. When achievement disappears, warmth quietly contracts again. Not cruelly, not dramatically, almost naturally, like water returning to its original level. 3 years ago, Nadia's logistics consultancy crossed into visible success, a major contract, industry recognition, public credibility, the kind of success relatives can understand immediately because it comes with proof. And almost overnight, the family system reorganized itself around her visibility. People suddenly interested in her story, interested in her schedule, interested in her business, interested in her success. And for 2 weeks, she thought she was imagining the discomfort she felt, because the warmth was real, the pride was real, the calls sounded sincere. But something inside her kept whispering, where was this love when I was invisible? That question changed everything, because once someone notices transactional love, they cannot unsee it. Every interaction becomes emotionally layered. Every compliment carries uncertainty. Every warm moment quietly asks, would this still exist if I had nothing impressive to show you? 4 seconds. Nadia did not cut off her family. She is very careful about that distinction, because the love was real. The people were real. The affection was real. Transactional love is not fake love. It is love filtered through achievement. Love that becomes easier for people to access when success gives them something emotionally comfortable to connect to. So Nadia made a different decision. She stopped performing her success for them. She stopped sending updates, stopped sharing victories, stopped turning conversations toward business growth, stopped feeding the family system with visible achievement. And something fascinating happened. Some people stayed. Some people adapted. Some people genuinely wanted her, not her success. and others slowly disappeared again. Measure clarity. Dark psychology calls this transactional disengagement, removing achievement from the relationship in order to discover whether the relationship can survive without it. And what survives that removal is usually the truth. Nadia told me something that took her years to understand. She said, "The silence taught me more about my family than 20 years of holidays ever did. Because during holidays, everyone performs closeness, but silence reveals who actually reaches for you when there is nothing socially rewarding to gain from it." And slowly, painfully, she realized something else. You are not more lovable when you succeed. You are simply easier to understand inside cultures that measure human value through visible achievement. Some people only know how to emotionally recognize success. They do not know how to emotionally recognize struggle, or uncertainty, or invisibility, or quiet persistence. That limitation belongs to them, not to you. Nadia said, "For years I thought the silence meant I was failing as a person. But silence is not always rejection. Sometimes silence simply reveals who knows how to love without applause and who does not." Tell me something honestly. Have you ever built something while nobody was watching, and then watched everyone suddenly appear once the thing became successful? Have you ever received loud congratulations from people who were silent during the difficult years? Have you ever felt strangely lonely inside praise because the people praising you were absent when you needed comfort instead of admiration? Tell me below, because transactional love is one of the most invisible wounds in family psychology. It hides inside compliments, inside pride, inside applause, inside relatives who love you sincerely, but only know how to see you clearly once achievement makes you socially visible. And the people carrying this wound are often the last people anyone thinks to ask if they are okay. Subscribe for the next story. A woman who kept peace in her family for 30 years. Every conflict absorbed, every tension softened, every difficult conversation managed so everyone else could remain comfortable, until the day she stopped and the family revealed what that peace had really been protecting. I will see you then.